Check out carmarshal.com. The link is in the description. They help support us.
We also continue to follow developing news out of Sturgeon Bay tonight. An officer is recovering after being shot by a fellow officer. It happened after 6 a.m. on a private road off of West Elm Street. Jordan Betts explains how a disorderly conduct call ended with an officer in the hospital.
A Sturgeon Bay officer is out of the hospital.
Ended with an officer in the hospital.
A Sturgeon Bay officer is out of the hospital after a fellow officer accidentally shoots him.
This was an unintended discharge.
It all started with a call about a disorderly man.
A 26-year-old male inside of a home with his mom and dad. The male was wielding a knife and going after his dad.
Officers say it took them quite some time to calm him down. They believe he was under the influence of alcohol, drugs, or both.
They were able to get the knife away from him, but then the subject went into a defensive posture, an aggressive posture, and the officers took him to the ground, had to be tased.
When officers were handcuffing the man, a different officer's gun went off, hitting one of them in the leg. The officers' names have not been released, but we do know that they both are veterans of the department.
The Department of Criminal Investigation has been called in, which is standard procedure.
As of the 26-year-old man, he has been booked into the Door County Jail. In Sturgeon Bay.
Cop pulls gun on unarmed man, then he shoots his fellow officer. After he pulled his gun out on an unarmed individual who was already under police control, an irresponsible officer shot a fellow cop. By Matt Agarist, December 19, 2017. Sturgeon Bay, Wisconsin, highlighting the dangerous nature of police and their propensity to point loaded weapons at unarmed people. A cop in Sturgeon Bay, Wisconsin just shot his fellow officer. Naturally, as in the case in most every accidental police shooting TFTP has covered, police are claiming the officer's weapon simply went off on its own. The incident began early Monday when police were called out to a residence at which a 26-year-old man was threatening his parents with a knife. According to police, the young man's father told officers that his son was under the influence of drugs or alcohol, or both. The first officers on the scene did an incredible job at de-escalating the situation and managed to convince the young man to drop the knife. The officers got there, they had to talk the subject down for a good amount of time. They were able to get the knife away from him. But then the subject went into a defense posture, an aggressive posture. The officers took him to the ground, had to be tossed, Police Captain Dan Brinkman said. To recap, the 26-year-old man, who was going after his father, had been successfully disarmed and was being taken into custody by the officers, who then tasered him when he resisted. During this struggle, another officer who was not involved in the hands-on action pulled his gun and fired off a round. During that hands-on period, another officer, who was not part of the hands-on handcuffing, a firearm discharged, and it struck another officer in the leg, Brinkman says. Advertisement. Read more. The U.S. is killing too many children. Omar Mateen's 911 call transcripts released. This was an unintended discharge, said Brinkman. Notice the language used by Brinkman in the press conference to try and portray a scene in which the officer had nothing to do with shooting his fellow cop. The cop didn't accidentally shoot a fellow officer, but, rather, the firearm discharged. Luckily, the officer who was shot was not seriously hurt and he was subsequently treated and released from the hospital. The status of the officer whose gun accidentally discharged is that he is not facing any charges as of yet for shooting a cop. However, the chief noted that he is shook up. As is standard procedure, the Wisconsin Department of Criminal Investigation has been called to help with the investigation. Aside from the above-the-law treatment of the officer, the excuse of the weapon accidentally discharging is nothing short of asinine. Guns do not fire themselves. Weapons companies spend a significant amount of time and money making sure their guns don't simply go off. While it is entirely possible for older single-action revolvers, which required the hammer to be cocked, to go off when dropped, The idea of a modern pistol accidentally firing without someone pulling the trigger is simply absurd. There are more guns than people in the United States. It is estimated that Americans own around 357 million firearms. If these weapons were so prone to accidentally firing, there would be a lot of dead Americans. However, that is clearly not the case. The reality is that these cases of guns accidentally firing most always involve police, who are entrusted by the public to responsibly carry weapons, failing miserably at their jobs. You could rest assured that if a mere citizen were to shoot and injure another person accidentally, they would be cast out by the anti-gun crowd and plastered across the mainstream media. They would also be in jail. Read more: strip searches, brutality, and violent arrests, proves which side the government has taken on DAPL. However, if your job is to carry a firearm for a living to ostensibly protect society and you shoot your own colleague while doing this job, you are immediately presumed innocent and given special treatment. Just over a year ago, TFTP reported on 3 instances in a single week in which officers accidentally fired their weapons. Some of the unintended victims were not as lucky as the cop in Sturgeon Bay. At a Halloween party in October 2016, a cop in North Carolina shot and severely injured her own daughter as she showed off her service weapon. She has not been charged. Prior to that shooting, a cop in Ohio fired his weapon into a daycare center while it was fully occupied. Just after those 2 shootings, a 20-year veteran deputy of the Fresno County Sheriff's Department was shot and killed by his fellow officer. Officials immediately ruled it an accident and began the narrative that the gun somehow just went off on its own. Deputy Sergeant Rod Lucas was having a conversation near the Fresno Yosemite International Airport about how to carry backup weapons when one deputy's weapon was discharged, striking Lucas in the chest. Lucas was in the room with 2 other deputies, and, according to MIMS, there was no dispute at the time, ironically, just a conversation about weapon safety. The detective had his weapon out. During this discussion, the detective's weapon discharged, the sheriff said. Sergeant Lucas was struck by the bullet in his chest, and he dropped to the ground. Case closed.
All right.
I'm ready.
So what do we know? At about 6:10 this morning, or more precisely 6:08 this morning, city police officers were dispatched to a disorderly male, a 26-year-old male, inside of a home with his mom and dad. The male was wielding a knife and going after his dad, said to be either under the influence of alcohol or drugs or both. The officers got there, had to talk the subject down for a good amount of time. They were able to get the knife away from him, but then the subject went into a defensive posture, an aggressive posture, and the officers took him to the ground, had to be tased, and during that hands-on period, another officer who was not part of the hands-on handcuffing, firearm discharged, and it struck another officer in the leg. That officer was transported to the local hospital and is set to be discharged shortly.
Did he have surgery this morning?
I don't know what the treatment was. I was just told he was set to be discharged.
And talk about how the incident happened. The officer, did it accidentally shoot him or is still under investigation?
This was an unintended discharge. The Department of Criminal Investigation has been called in, which is standard procedure. They are on their way up as we speak, and they will be taking over the scene. I will be coordinating with the Department of Criminal Investigation Public Information Officer, and we will determine how we should proceed in the future for more releases, more news releases.
And how is the family this morning?
Families are fine.
And are you going to release the officer's name, or?
We will in the future. I don't know when that will be, though.
Can you tell us about the two officers involved? The injured party, is he a veteran? Has he been on the force for a while? And then secondarily, the officers whose his gun discharged, what about him?
Both officers are veterans. The one that had the unintended discharge is a veteran, and the officer who was shot is also a veteran. That's all I have at this time. Again, I will coordinate with Department of Criminal Investigation, and we'll have more in the future.
Hey Charlotte County, this is Charlotte County Cop Watch, and I wanted to explain what fair use is. You can use pieces of news articles if you're doing it for news reporting, you have commentary, and you're doing it for education purposes. So that's what fair use is, as you can see right here. Another reason why I wanted to make this video is to let you know I have just joined with Patreon. A nice thing with Patreon, I make no money on YouTube. They took the money away years ago, and so this is another way to give, and it's a nice thing too because you can give monthly. You can give $1, $5, $10, whatever. I do 4 to 5 hours a day on trying to wake the sheeple up on how corrupt it is and different ways that you can fight the corruption. So Patreon is a way that you can do it, and then of course the old way is still there. Donate to Sheriff County Cop Watch with PayPal or credit card. So keep that in mind. 4 to 5 hours a day. I make no money, but the corruption happened to me and I'm sick of it, so I'm trying to wake people up. But my wife would love it if some, if we could get some help out there. There's 47,000 subscribers. Just think if each one of you subscribers just gave a, let's say, actually, yes, $1 a month. 47,000 subscribers gave $1 a month. That would be awesome. That's not going to happen. But anyways, that would be great if it did happen. But, do the math in your head. Just think about it. Like I said, 4 to 5 hours a day. I get no money from YouTube. YouTube has gone nuts. You can't do anything anymore. They're taking the money away everywhere. So these are a couple different ways that you can still help out with all this time that I put in. And as you know, I'm in a special situation where, at least I can do it. 4 to 5 hours a day. We have a cleaning company during the day. That's what allows me to do this, and we're debt free. So this is my hobby. I don't go fishing and all that other crap. I try to save the world. So help me out to make the wife happy, man. In fact, if you guys did give $1 a day, and there was 47,000 of you, and you did it, and each of you gave $1, and that was every month, oh my God, yes, I could quit. I could start suing them. Another idea too that we have is, if I got, some funds, we could actually contact everyone that has been ticketed and or arrested and put in jail and start sending them postcards to let them know we're here, and to see if everything went all right, and if it didn't, find out their story. So we could even do more investigations and more lawsuits. Lawsuits take money. So just think about that. 47,000 of you so far right now. $1 a day. $1 a month on Patreon, or $5 a month Patreon, 10, 20, whatever. Just do the math in your head. Help out. This is a lot of work every single day. Thanks.